Our primary focus this year is on stepping up the fight against organized crime and criminal syndicates. And we will do so using technology, intelligence, and integrated law enforcement. We will tackle organized crime by consolidating intelligence at national level, identifying priority syndicates, and deploying hand-picked multidisciplinary intervention teams focused on dismantling criminal networks. To strengthen our fight, against gang violence, I will be deploying the South African National Defence Force to support the police Now, thank you. As I said, I will be deploying the South African National Defence Force to support the police as we did to great effect with illegal mining. I have directed the Minister of Police and the SANDF to develop a technical plan on where our security forces should be deployed within the next few days in the Western Cape and in Gauteng to deal with gang violence and illegal mining. Now, as is required by the Constitution, I will inform the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces regarding the timing and place of the deployment of our soldiers and what it will cost. We have to act to rid our country of gang violence.
This is South Africa in 2026. This is the story of how your money, your safety, and your future have been sacrificed on the altar of corruption, incompetence, and a complete and utter collapse of leadership. We are talking about President Cyril Ramaphosa ordering the South African National Defence Force to go to war, not with a foreign enemy, but with criminal gangs on our own streets. And the question we have to ask is the one that nobody in power wants to answer. Why, in God's name, do we need the army to do the job we are already paying billions of rands for the police to do? On the 12th of February 2026, during his State of the Nation address, President Ramaphosa stood in front of the nation and told South Africans that organized crime is now the most immediate threat to our democracy, our society, and our economic development. And he announced that the South African National Defence Force, the SANDF, is being deployed to the Western Cape to fight gangs and to Gauteng to deal with the illegal miners, the Zamas. On the surface, you might think, good, finally some action. But if you scratch that surface just a little bit, you will find a rot so deep, so putrid, that it threatens the very foundation of the state. Because the only reason the army has to be deployed is that the South African Police Service, the SAPS, is either incapable of doing its job, or it's on the payroll of the criminals it's supposed to be fighting. And in some cases, it's both. Let's just sit with that reality for a moment. We, the taxpayers of South Africa, fund the SAPS. We pay for their salaries. We pay for their pensions. We pay for their housing allowances, their medical aids, their training, their vehicles, their ammunition. It costs us billions and billions of rands every single year to maintain a police force that is supposedly there to protect us. And now we are being told that they cannot handle a gang problem. They cannot handle illegal miners, the same gangs that have been running the Cape Flats for decades, the same Zamas that have been operating with impunity for years. Acting Police Minister Firoz Kochalia admitted as much last month, stating that the police were not yet able to defeat the deadly criminal gangs. So now we have to pay for the army to do it. We have to pay for soldiers, their rations, their fuel, their deployment costs. We are paying twice for the same service, and we are getting half the protection. That is not governance. That is a racket. Deputy Defense Minister Bantu Holomisa has confirmed that the troops are ready and will be on the ground within 2 weeks, pending the final word from Parliament. 2 weeks. That's how fast the military can move when the order comes from the top. But where is this speed when it comes to fixing the saps? Where is the urgency when it comes to weeding out the corruption that has turned our police stations into dens of criminals in uniform? You see, the problem is not just that the police are under-resourced, although they are. Police numbers have declined in some of the most violent precincts, and to address this, the President announced a recruitment drive for an additional 5,500 police officers this year. But you cannot solve a crime if you don't have the detectives to investigate it. You cannot build a case if the people who are supposed to build it are compromised. But here's the part that really cuts to the bone. The part that makes you want to throw something at the television. The vacancies are bad, yes, but the corruption is catastrophic. There are allegations, and these are not just rumors from disgruntled civilians. These are allegations from within the police service itself, that the SAPS has been infiltrated by the very gangs they are meant to be fighting. The former head of crime intelligence, a man named Lieutenant General Peter Jacobs, stood up in front of Parliament in 2022 and said that a staggering 80% of police officers in Gauteng are compromised. 80%. 80%. He said they are on the payroll of organized crime. Think about that number. 8 out of every 10 police officers in our economic heartland are allegedly in bed with the criminals. And what happened to that explosive testimony? What happened to that whistleblower? He was removed from his post. He was silenced because the truth is too dangerous for the people running this show. And it's not just Gauteng. The recent revelations from the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry into allegations of impropriety in the SAPs have exposed the rot in horrific detail. The Commission has heard testimony about alleged links between senior police and underworld figures. In one chilling case, a private security officer, Marius van der Merwe, who testified anonymously about a corrupt police group in Ekurhuleni that allegedly tortured and killed a suspect, was gunned down outside his home in December 2025. This group, which included SAPS and Metro police officers, allegedly used police resources for personal enrichment and criminal activities. So when you hear about gang violence on the Cape Flats, when you hear about mothers losing their children to stray bullets, when you hear about entire communities held hostage by drug lords, you have to understand that the people who are supposed to be the first line of defense are often the ones tipping off the criminals, selling back confiscated drugs, or simply looking the other way for an envelope full of cash. Just recently, 11 members of the Western Cape's own anti-gang unit appeared in court facing charges of murder, kidnapping, and torture relating to the death of a suspected gang member. The Western Cape Premier Alan Wind has welcomed the army deployment. He says it will provide short-term relief, and he's right, it will. For a few weeks, maybe a few months, the soldiers will be there. They will patrol the streets. They will look intimidating. The gangs will lie low. The Zamas will go deeper underground. And everyone will pat themselves on the back and say, look, we did something. But what happens when the soldiers leave? What happens when the SANDF goes back to its bases and its primary mandate of defending the borders? The gangs will still be there. The corrupt police officers will still be in their stations. The system will still be broken because the army is a plaster on a bullet wound. It treats the symptom, but it does not heal the wound. And this brings us to the bigger picture. The reason this country called South Africa is in such a mess is not just because of gangs in the Cape Flats. It is because the entire machinery of the state has been hollowed out. It is because leadership has failed at every single level. We see it in energy, where Eskom, our power utility, cannot keep the lights on, and we are subjected to endless stages of load shedding because of corruption and mismanagement at the highest levels. We see it in education, where children sit in pit latrine toilets and cannot read for meaning by the time they reach grade 4. We see it in health, where hospitals run out of medicine and patients die waiting for beds because the money has been stolen. And we are told some patients prefer sleeping on hospital floors. And we see it in land reform, where policies are announced with great fanfare, but the people who actually work the land, farmers of all races, are left in a state of uncertainty and fear. And yes, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the communities that are overlooked, the ones that are never mentioned in the SONA speeches. The white South Africans who are told they are privileged, who are told they have no right to complain, while their farms are attacked, while their businesses are looted, while they are murdered at a rate that would be a national emergency if it happened in any other demographic. Just in the first few weeks of February, the farming community around Imalaleni was rocked by 2 violent farm attacks in 5 days, with suspects stealing livestock and tying up victims. But because the narrative is that only Black Lives Matter in the discourse of victimhood, their suffering is ignored. They are told to emigrate if they don't like it. They are told they are holding on to the past. But they are South Africans. They pay taxes. They employ people. They contribute to this economy. And when they cry out for help, when they ask for protection, the police are often hours away if they come at all. And now, when the army is finally deployed, it is not to protect them. It is to clean up a mess that the police created. Do you see the pattern here? Do you see the absurdity? We have a government that cannot run a police service, so it calls in the army. It cannot run a power utility, so it calls in the private sector. It cannot run a port authority, so it hands it over to a foreign company. It cannot run a health system, so it begs for donor funding. Every single function of the state is either failing or being outsourced because the people in charge are either incompetent or corrupt, and in many cases both, and our tax money is used to pay their inflated salaries and benefits. How can this even happen? President Ramaphosa stands up and says that organized crime is a threat to our democracy. He's right. But who allowed that threat to grow? Who defunded the police? Who protected the corrupt generals? Who looked the other way while the gangs took over? The same people who are now calling in the army, the same people who have been in power for over 30 years, the same people who expect us to clap when they finally, belatedly, do the absolute bare minimum. The Madlanga Commission, which has been investigating police corruption, laid out in chilling detail how state capture has infected our police services. It showed how intelligence services were compromised, how the police were paralyzed, how the justice system was undermined. And what has been done with that report? A few recommendations here, a few promises there. President Ramaphosa has received an interim report from the Commission, which is not public. But where is the accountability? Where are the arrests? Where is the jail time for the people who sold this country down the river? To date, only 12 police officers have been criminally convicted for corruption in the last 5 years, out of 218 dismissed for such offenses. They tell us they are going to fix the SAPs. They are going to recruit more officers. They are going to implement reforms based on the Commission's findings. But we've heard it all before. We heard it after Marikana. We heard it after the Nkandla scandal. We heard it after State Capture Report Part 1 and Part 2 and Part 3. We hear it every time there is an election. And nothing changes. Nothing. Because the problem is not a lack of plans. The problem is a lack of will. The problem is a lack of leadership that actually cares about the people of this country, all the people, not just the ones who vote for them. The problem is a political elite that has become so disconnected from the suffering of ordinary South Africans that they think deploying the army is a solution rather than a confession of failure. So what do we do? What can we do when the system is rigged against us, when the institutions that are supposed to protect us are either broken or corrupt? We can either sit back and accept it, let the anger fester until it turns into despair, or we can fight back. We can use our voices. We can use the platforms we have. We can demand accountability, and we can support the voices that are telling the truth, no matter how uncomfortable that truth is. If you have watched this video to the end, if you feel even a fraction of the anger that I feel, then I am asking you to do something. I am asking you to hit the like button. Not because it helps me, but because it helps the algorithm find more people like you. People who are tired of the lies. People who want the truth. I am asking you to subscribe to this channel, click that button, ring that bell, because we are building a community here. A community of South Africans who refuse to look away. A community that holds power accountable. And I am asking you to share this video. Send it to your family, send it to your friends, send it to your colleagues, post it on WhatsApp, post it on Facebook, let it spread. Because the only thing the people in power fear is the light. The only thing they fear is the truth being seen by too many eyes. And if you want to go further, if you want to be a part of the inner circle that makes this work possible, consider joining the channel membership. Hit that join button, or if you can't commit to a monthly membership, drop a super thanks donation. Just a small donation, it all helps. It helps us stay independent. It helps us keep digging. It helps us give a voice to the voiceless, to the overlooked, to the minority groups who are told they don't matter, and to the majority who are suffering just as much, because this country is worth fighting for. This country, with all its mess, with all its corruption, with all its heartbreak, is our home, and we cannot let them destroy it without a fight. So get angry, get motivated, get involved, and let's make sure they hear us. Subscribe, like, share, and comment below. Tell me what you think. Tell me your story. Tell me how you are feeling right now, because we are in this together. And the truth will set us free.